The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer. St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on the Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.
Hi, everybody. This is Jason Rosenbaum, a reporter with St. Louis Public Radio and the co-host of the Politically Speaking podcast. I had the great honor last night to be the moderator of a candidate forum at East Central College in Union, Missouri. I got to talk with local, state, and federal candidates about topics that are on voters' minds and that could be top of mind when some of these people enter the halls of power. I decided it would be a good idea for the citizens of Franklin, St. Louis counties, as well as the rest of Missouri, to post the audio here. So without further ado, here is the Franklin County Candidate Forum at East Central College.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking some time to come to the first ever Franklin County Candidate Forum. We're excited to have you all here tonight. I'm Joel Depker. I'm Vice President of External Relations here at East Central College. On behalf of the college, it is certainly our pleasure and honor to host tonight's event. But before we begin the event, please rise as the East Central College students Courtney Burris, Jennifer Como, and Crystal Reed lead us in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, ladies. Well done. Thank you. As you might imagine, an effort like this isn't done easily and without a number of people. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the groups that came together to put on tonight's event. That would include college students, employees, community members, and of course, our candidates. Thanks to the ECC Student Government Association, the Civic Community Engagement Committee, Franklin County Democrats, Franklin County Republicans, and tonight's moderator, Jason Rosenbaum from St. Louis Public Radio. Would you please take a moment and give them a round of applause for their efforts? Are there any elected officials that are not participating in tonight's forum that are in attendance? Of course, you're all very dark. I can't see any hands being raised. We would like to give them a chance to come up and introduce themselves if they are in the audience. I don't see anyone. Okay, very good. And again, thank you for being here, to our candidates, for everyone that came out tonight, because it's really an honor for us for East Central College to be the center of this forum and really be and see this democratic process unfold. If you'd like to ask any of the candidates any questions, two ways to do it. You can fill out a question. There's some paper outside available, and I believe there's a bowl handy up there. You can drop it off there. If it's for a specific race, make sure you put that on there. And we'll also have students walking around with a microphone, I believe, if you'd like to raise your hand and ask a question. Yes?
What if I have their names on the index card?
That's okay.
For Trish, could they read them?
Yeah, you just drop it off in the bowl there. Yep, yep.
I'm almost done.
Okay, she's almost done.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. To start, again, thank you so much for attending. And to start tonight's forum, we'll turn it over now to Jason Rosenbaum to begin tonight's event. Jason, there you are. Thank you. It's very dark.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Had to put my water down for a second. I want to thank East Central College for bringing me here and to all the candidates who have agreed to participate. Missouri has gone through a titanically important year in 2018. We had an unprecedented situation where our governor resigned, and we have a new leadership in Jefferson City that's substantially different. And what'd you say? Well, I'm not going to make any editorial comments on that, but I will make this editorial comment. I think that situation showcased how important it is for voters to be informed about who goes to their state legislature and to local offices. Hopefully that's not too controversial. And that's one of the reasons I'm so happy to be moderating this forum today. And I'm going to give everybody a little sense of how it's going to work tonight. There are several candidates who are running for some local offices who are not opposed, are in one case is running for a judicial post that I can't really question them about due to Missouri Bar Association restrictions, that are going to come up and say their piece for a few minutes. Then once we have particular races where both the Republican and Democratic candidates are in attendance, they're going to be on stage with me for about 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to ask them a series of questions. There's no time limit for the answers, but if they do start filibustering, I will gently tell them to wrap their answers up. For some of the races that candidates are here, but not all the candidates in the particular race are here, I will either read a statement from the candidates that have statements, and for the candidates that are here, I will ask them questions for about 7 to 10 minutes. They made the effort to come here tonight. I think that in especially the cases for some of the state offices, I do want to give them a little bit of time as well. You should applaud for all the candidates too, not just those particular ones. And if there's no other questions, although I wasn't asking for questions, by the way, I am asking for questions, as was mentioned before. If you have a question for a specific candidate in a particular race, make sure to put it in that green bowl over there. I will be pulling some questions and asking them as time goes on. They're going to kind of be brought to me as we're doing this forum. And without further ado, let's start with a couple of the candidates that are running unopposed. Tim Baker for County Clerk, come on up here.
Well, thank you very much for having me this evening. My name is Tim Baker, and I am running for the office of County Clerk. I won the August 7th election, so I'm running unopposed in the November election. I am a lifelong resident of Franklin County. My background is in manufacturing. Our family used to own a manufacturing company called Baker's Ice and Pacific, and we very actively involved in the communities that I've been in. Just great to be here tonight, and there's really not a lot else to say except thank you very much for everybody's support in August, and I look forward to serving you as your next county clerk.
Thank you very much. Okay. I was not expecting this, but...
There was not a question for Tim Baker.
Okay.
There's a question for Tim Brinker. No, Baker. It says Brinker on the file. No, I meant Baker. Okay.
All right, let me just see this question. So I was not expecting this, so I appreciate this. Can I still write Kyle's name on the November 6th ballot? I'm not really sure who Kyle is.
That was my opponent. Actually, the answer is yes, you can. I do not know what the actual date is for a write-in candidate to be an official write-in candidate. There's a process for that eliminates people like Mickey Mouse and Darth Vader and people like that have been written in. So the answer is yes, you can. But I don't know if it'll count if he did not file as an official write-in candidate.
And I will just add, if he ran against you in the primary, I do believe that there are restrictions against people that lost from being independent or write-in candidates. I'm not 100% sure about that, so but I'm pretty sure that there are some restrictions against having those votes count, if I'm not mistaken.
But you are more than welcome to write that name in, yes.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Doug Trentman, who's running for county collector. Give him a round of applause, everybody.
Yeah, my name is Doug Trentman. I'm running, I won the August primary for the Collector of Revenue Office, so I'm running unopposed in November. I ran for the Collector of Revenue job because I am Linda's chief deputy. I've worked in the office for 6 years, so we've already started our nice smooth transition. We're working right now on rolling in the new tax year, so very busy in the office, but kind of like Tim, I don't really have too much to say to it. If anybody wants to ask me any questions, go ahead. Are you going to collect revenue? We are absolutely going to collect revenue. That's our job.
Well, there you go. Thank you very much. I don't think we have any questions for you, so wait. Oh, is there a question in there?
No, but I have one personal.
I'm just going to ask if you have questions for the candidate to write them down and put them in the bowl. Like, I think that that's going to be the format going forward, if that's okay. So, you're more than welcome to ask multiple questions of multiple candidates. I want to make clear, but we're just going to try to do the same thing for each one. The next person that we have is the county municipal judge. Gail Wood is on the ballot, but he is not here, so we have Bill Stallhuth today, and he's going to speak for a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, East Central, for having us all out tonight. My name is Bill Stallhuth, and I want to be your next county municipal judge. A little bit about my background. I graduated from the University of Missouri at Columbia in 1985 and Washington University School of Law in St. Louis in 1988. I'm licensed to practice law in both Illinois and Missouri. Over the years, I've held and worked on different cases from as far away as Portland, Maine to LA out in California. My favorite place to practice, though, is right here at home in Franklin County. You might ask yourself, why is this election or judgeship important for you? Well, if on the way home tonight you're west of Union and you're pulled over by a county sheriff, a deputy sheriff, and you receive a speeding violation, well, that's something that might come before the county municipal court. And I want to be the judge that would hear that case if something like that happened. I want to talk about maybe 2 items that could improve the court and the operation of it. I have an interest in alternate sentencing, I'll get that out, such as community service. I think that's a good way for some folks to address a violation of that nature. And then the other thing that I think is important is that we could get the county ordinances on the county website, get that published there. My name is Bill Stallhuth, and I want to be your next municipal judge. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. So now we have our first candidate pairing where both candidates are here. It's the 26th Senatorial District, which includes all of Franklin County and parts of western St. Louis County. I'm pretty sure that my dad's former house in Chesterfield is in this district, so I am definitely taking a personal interest in this. So please welcome to the stage Republican incumbent State Senator Dave Schatz and Democratic challenger John Kiehne. Do you have any questions here? All right. Feel free to have a seat and take a microphone. These are very comfortable chairs. Shout out to East Central College for this. So before I ask you guys any questions, I'm going to give you each a minute or two to introduce yourselves and just to provide a basic rationale for why people in Franklin and St. Louis County should vote for you. So I'll start with John.
All right. My name's John Kiehne, and I'm running for State Senate in our 26th Senate District. I am a professional musician, singer, songwriter, producer, instructor, and recording artist. I've also spent many years as a foster advocate and provider. I was born and raised in St. Charles, Missouri, spent many years in Boston, Massachusetts, and now call Franklin County my home, along with my wife of 10 years, Michelle, who's in here somewhere. I decided to run for office because I feel like our state and our country are kind of running into a ditch. And I know some people have done very well, and some people have not. Working in the foster system has had me dealing with people who have not done so well for a great number of years. I think that our kids need better schools. I think that our teachers need better pay. I think our workers need better jobs. And I think our businesses should have the opportunity to do well. I think everybody should have the opportunity to do well. I have a mission that, and you may have noticed the Republicans, I kind of introduced myself to everybody, including my opponent, Dave, I want to represent everybody. And I think that my mission is to make Franklin County, St. Louis County, Missouri better for everybody. So whether we had a kid graduate from Eureka, which is a very good school, they're also a very well-funded school in Rockwood. And as you go down 44, the schools are struggling more as you get toward the middle of the state. I would like to work on addressing those issues, making sure that every kid has access to a quality education. We've had a family farm for 130 years. So I want to address issues of the struggling family farmer and still be aware of the business owners and the white-collar workers in Chesterfield or even anywhere else in the state, because I think it's okay to make money. We just need to be fair in how we distribute it. I'm John Kiehne, and I hope to be your state senator in the 26th Senate District next year. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Senator? Senator, your turn for your introduction.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks to the students and the faculty and the folks that put this together, the Franklin County folks that were able to bring us together. I think it's fantastic that we have the opportunity to inform constituents, and I appreciate the people that are here that are doing more than the average person. They're coming out and getting information on the candidates and who they'll be supporting in November. My name is Dave Schatz. I am the current state senator for the 26th Senatorial District, which encompasses all of Franklin County and western St. Louis County, the cities of Eureka, Wildwood, Chesterfield Valley area. I served in the legislature, entered the legislature in 2011, was elected in 2010 to the House, served 4 years there, moved over to the Senate, and have served the past 4 years from that chamber. I have been born and raised in Franklin County. This November, I will be 55 years old. Lived all my life in the Sullivan area and native to the area, and continue to live today on the farm where I was born and raised. I am very fortunate and blessed to have married my wife, Shara. That we've been married this year will be our 31st year of marriage. Blessed with 5 children. Thank you. Yeah. And
you can applaud for that.
Yes. Had 5 wonderful children, and probably my greatest accomplishment right now, I would tell you, is my grandkids. I have 4 grandsons, Caden, Nolan, Tyson, William, and I have 1 on the way. We've got about a basketball team started, so we're going to hopefully, and maybe this will be a girl. Hopefully we'll get a girl here at some point in time, but those are the passion. That's why I think it's necessary for me to be in Jeff City, because the future resides in those young kids, and what kind of state are they going to grow up in, what kind of environment they're going to grow in. That's the passion that I have, and the reason why I serve is because of that. It's difficult. It is being away and being gone from them is sometimes challenging, but I also know it's necessary in order to make sure that Missouri is a great place to work and live and raise a family. So I thank you for being here, and with that, I'll go back to Jason.
All right. Feel free to applaud after the opening statements. I'm going to make this rule now. Until we're done questioning, just please hold your applause until the end of questioning so we can get through as many as possible. I'm going to start with one that came on this index card that could eventually be ripe in the next 4 years or may not be ripe. If elected, will you support right-to-work legislation? For context, right-to-work is shorthand proponents use for a policy that bars unions and employers from requiring workers to pay dues as a condition of employment. This policy was passed by the legislature in 2017, but just repealed by the voters earlier this summer. Senator Schatz, I think you voted for right-to-work. My question is, would you bring this issue up again?
I think the issue is over. I think the voters have voted. I think the issue is a done deal. I don't think there's any shape, form, or fashion where the legislature would attempt to bring this up. Obviously, that, again, I think that with the results that we've seen from that, there was a very effective campaign, and the voters spoke, and obviously I believe that's the end of it.
John.
I oppose right to work and any workers' policy that's going to affect workers, be it tort reform, be it diminishing workers' comp rights and so forth. Right to work is wrong for Missouri. I believe I have parents, and most of my family are teachers. And I have a lot of friends and neighbors who are iron workers, who are carpenters. And, in doing this, you go to a lot of meetings. And I've been going to a lot of foster meetings as well for a long time. And when you go to these meetings, there are people who are convicted. They're concerned about issues that affect their life, whether it's a kid or a certain issue or what have you. And when I go to a union meeting and I see these cats, men and women, that are deeply concerned about how they're going to take care of their family, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old man or woman who is dependent upon, I say dependent upon, you worked hard to get into a trade to be able to make an adult wage and have a pension and have benefits, and they need that, and they've worked hard to earn it, and so they'd like to keep that. So I would oppose right to work and any anti-worker legislation. I appreciate that business owners want to make money, but I think we can figure out a way to make sure workers get paid as well.
Let's talk about an issue that, again, please hold your applause until the end so we can get through as many questions. Let's talk about something that is going to be on the ballot in November. That's Proposition D, which is a gas tax increase. I want to hear both of your opinions on this, whether you would vote for this when you go into the ballot box, and whether you think it's a good or a bad idea to raise gas taxes for transportation, because as everybody in Franklin County knows, the roads and transportation infrastructure here has been an issue for years, if not decades. It's very possible that increasing the gas tax could do quite a bit for Franklin County. So I'll go in backwards order now. John, you get the first hit at that.
I think funding our government is challenging because, as Dave well knows, we have to figure out a way to spend the revenue that we already have, and we have to split it up. And so I understand the challenge in doing that. There's a finite amount of money that has to go to schools, that has to go to roads. Our roads are typically funded through the fuel tax. We actually have, I believe, the 49th lowest fuel tax in the United States, something like that. We have maybe the 7th most roads, I believe, in the entire United States in the state of Missouri. There's a lot of roads to take care of for not very much money. The problem is most people don't want to pay taxes. I don't think any of us want to pay taxes, but taxes is how we have schools. It's how we have the stage that we're sitting on. It's how we have the roads. It's how we have public schools and a lot of the things that we need. Unfortunately, a fuel tax like that is regressive, so the value of the tax over time, which we haven't had a fuel tax raise in a number of years, is going to be regressive due to the fact that we have the rising cost of living and we have inflation and so forth. But how are we going to fund it? I think we're just stuck with, we've had lower rates that have not passed. Now we're getting to the point where we have bridges and we have roads that need to be fixed. And if we're going to do it through the fuel tax, then we have to do that. There's been a concern with some people that I've talked to about the fact that electric cars and some other technologies are getting big. We talked about perhaps a vehicle use tax that applies a tax that will perhaps apply to a broader swath of people. Conversely, people in the rural areas who drive a lot are concerned about a fuel tax because they feel that it may be a bit unfair if you have to drive an hour everywhere that you go. So I think the fuel tax right now might be the best solution that we have. My concern with it is that only about 30% of it actually goes to the roads, and 70% goes to the State Highway Patrol. So I'm not sure how that balance works out. I feel like maybe we need a little bit more on the roads that have been underfunded for a very long time. So that would be a concern of how that is split up.
Senator?
Obviously, Jason, I've served in the House. I was the chair of transportation. In the Senate, I'm the chair of transportation. I was the one that worked through the legislation and authored and offered the amendment to put Proposition D on the ballot. I'm very familiar with the distribution of the funds. This is basically a user fee. The way that our roads have been paid for the last 98 years has been through a motor fuel tax, what I'll call the motor fuel user fee. The users pay for it. Again, stated, we have the 7th largest footprint in the state. We are funded around 44th in the nation as we fund our roads and bridges. The distribution, obviously, it's not, 3/4 of it does not go to fund the Highway Patrol. In this particular instance, though, the Highway Patrol is funded from the motor fuel user fee. So we do pay for our Highway Patrol, and the safety part of our roads comes from the motor fuel tax. But it is a dedicated funding. That's the only way that we pay for our roads and bridges, through the motor fuel tax. We do not pay through that through general revenue. It does not come from that. So therefore, I have advocated that this is something that we're going to put before the voters. This will create, in 10 years, this will create about 6,000 jobs. These are 6,000 good jobs. Typically, they're going to be high-wage jobs that we have not had in the past, and so I would be a strong advocate for Proposition D, and I would hope everyone would support it, because when you look at the issue, and I look at it from a business perspective, the inflation has eroded the buying power. The 17-cent gas tax was last raised in 1996. It now has the purchasing power about 8 cents. And we're just basically, by increasing this 2.5 cents over the next 4 years, gets us back to being able to buy what we could in 1996. So when you look at it from that perspective, it's the only thing we really have to do. And I will say this, there is an equivalency factor that's been put in there to bring alternative fuels up to paying the same rates that the motor vehicle fuels are paying. So we've addressed that in this particular piece of legislation. So the electric cars, the natural gas, CNG cars, they'll all be paying the equivalency of what the motor fuel tax is taken care of in this particular bill.
Thank you both for your answers on that. I want to talk about another issue that I think would be very important in Franklin County. That's prescription drug monitoring program. I remember when I was writing for the Washington Missourian that the meth crisis in Franklin County was at its peak. And from talking with now former presiding commissioner John Griesheimer, the opioid crisis has also hit Franklin County in the last couple of years. What would be your opinion on setting up a prescription drug monitoring program? And how would you be able to get it through the Senate, given that there is some right-of-center opposition to it? Some of it from Senator Rob Schaaf, who's leaving, but some of it may still be lingering. I'm going to start with Senator Schatz first.
Yeah, thank you. Again, obviously, Jason, that's a piece of legislation that I had carried. I've been working on the drug issues here in Franklin County the whole time I've been in the legislature. It's very important to me. Obviously, we're seeing the deterioration of individuals and lives being destroyed because of these types of drugs, and the opioids is just another problem that we've been facing. I sponsored the prescription drug monitoring bill last year. Obviously, we ran into opposition by one particular senator. He was basically the roadblock that prevented that from becoming law. It was passed through the House. It was at the point where we could have passed it through the Senate, but it was prohibited from Senator Rob Schaaf. When we worked diligently on this, I've been working on this for, like I said, a multitude of years, because this prescription drug monitoring gives a doctor the ability to make an informed decision on whether or not to prescribe those drugs. And that's literally what a prescription drug monitoring does. And how I ask every doctor that testified in a committee, if you could make a decision with information, are you a better doctor or worse doctor? Everyone to the point would tell me, if we have information, we can make a good decision and prevent people that may be on the road to addiction from getting to that point. We can get them help before it gets too late. I have advocated for it. We will continue to advocate for it. Obviously, there is I believe it needs to be a statewide initiative. We've seen that it needs to be across the state so that everybody has the information, has access to the information. We need to protect patient information. It's critical that we do that and give people the faith and confidence that that information will not be accessed by anyone other than the doctors that are typically trying to get information. But I've been a strong advocate for it and will continue to do so.
John?
And I saw that piece of legislation. I appreciate that, actually. I know it's a problem. I worked for a spine surgeon and for a number of years, and that was an issue of people who are in extreme pain having to go on opioids to try to deal with their pain, and inevitably a lot of them became dependent on opioids, and then were trying to get more, and then would go to other routes to try to deal with that. The opioid addiction issue is probably touched everybody in this room. I know it's touched my life. I had a student that was 23 that was gunned down in South City trying to buy opioids a couple of years ago. And he came from a lot of money. So having money or not having money doesn't really seem to make a difference whether you can get hooked on such a thing. But we really have to work a lot harder on trying to not only prevent the people from getting on, be it from the prescription drug direction or just from the party drug, so to speak, direction. We have to work harder on getting people to not access those drugs to begin with or not abuse them in the case of prescription drugs. But we also need to do things in our community to try to give people an opportunity that's something other than developing a drug habit. And then if they do develop a drug habit, I appreciate the treatment court that you guys passed here, last week, the statewide treatment court option. I've gotten some word from several addicts as well as several prosecuting attorneys that the treatment courts are a good way that's a little bit more robust in trying to get addicts to get themselves straightened out. The goal being that A, they don't become addicts, B, that we can somehow wean them off of the drug, and also try not to have these people in jail and be repeating offenders that keep coming through our jail. We're building a new jail, and I would argue that a lot of the people that we're building a jail for are there for drug-related offenses that are often associated with opioids. So I think that my desire to have better schools and better jobs and so forth all go towards, and better health care access, go all towards dealing with all these issues, be it from the prescription direction or some other direction.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to another audience question. Do you believe money is speech, and how do you plan to fight dark money and create transparency? I'm going to be a bit more specific here because this became a major issue over the last 2 years. Do you believe, or would you support legislation that would require a politically active 501c4 to disclose their donors if they spend money either for candidates or for ballot initiatives? So I'll start with John first.
Absolutely. Dark money is a problem. Greitens went down for that. I'm a Democrat, in case you didn't know. The money doesn't flow very copiously to Democrats these days. So I am running against someone who has $300,000 in the bank-ish and gets a lot of money from people who have PACs and have corporate business interests. And the vast majority of my donations are coming from individuals and people, because that is my desire, is to serve the voters, not a corporate interest who will give me $2,600, or back in the day it could be $50 or $100, and we don't do that anymore. But yes, dark money can then funnel in other funds. But if you go out in the hall, we all have push cards and we all have signs, and you're going to drive around Franklin County, and Dave and I are both going to have 4x4s and 4x8s and stuff. He'll probably have fewer than me, but he can afford it, and it's what we do in elections. And it's very expensive. We're tossing, Simmons has just so many signs. It costs $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 to run a campaign, even in a county or house election, and there's so much money in it. I think the clean legislature, the clean amendment, is a start, but we need to do a lot to make becoming engaged in our government and getting elected not dependent on, and this is true as a Democrat too, how much money you raise. I think we really, go clap it. I just really think it's important so that, whether Dave, who has a lot of resources, can run, God bless him, or somebody like me or somebody else in the audience that doesn't have those kind of resources can also have the opportunity to be involved in government and making decisions.
And Senator, just to add a little bit to this question before you answer it, some of these 501c4s that were connected to Greitens actually attacked some of your colleagues. Sure. So I'm sure that you have, an opinion on this that may be based off that experience. So feel free to answer and also possibly respond to John as well.
Sure. Obviously, I think that transparency is the key. And finding a way to make sure that obviously when you're supporting candidates and ballot initiatives and things like that, I think there needs to be transparency in that. So we need to find a way to make sure that those are treated that way. There's probably some 501c3s or C4s that obviously maybe are not. That some donors probably want to remain anonymous in those types of situations. But I think that we need to address it in the political realm to make sure that if we want to have transparency in our elections, see where the money's coming from, obviously, I think that's the right way to go. Again, when one of our fellow colleagues was attacked by some of the dark money, obviously that was a big issue on the Senate floor and was very distasteful and was not well received at that point. But to the extent that my opponent obviously discussing about the campaign funds and my campaign account and his, and obviously where my donors have supported me, but obviously he's calling the same people that are donating to my campaign, asking them for campaign contributions as well. So I've had multiple lobbyists in Jeff City have commented on the phone calls from his campaign staff asking for donations. So I just want to make sure that we clear that up too.
And just before we get to the next question, is that true, John?
I am unaware of that, but I do have someone else working for me, so he may be making some calls that I am unaware of. But I have not been trying to get PAC money, or I think I've been trying to get people to support my campaign. Okay. But yeah, I actually have been pretty squarely. I don't want PAC money.
Well,
so.
All right, I wanted to make sure you had a chance to respond before we move on to the next question. We'll have about 2 or 3 more questions before we get on to the next one. This is also from the audience, and this is an issue that one of my colleagues, Eli Chen, has written about a lot. How do you feel about strengthening protections from coal ash pollution, which I think is a big issue in Franklin County, given, I guess, an Ameren plant that I think is in Labadie, if I'm not mistaken? Yep. So I'll start with Senator Schatz on this one.
Well, obviously, anything we do in the environment, we want to put as many protections as we can to make sure that what we're doing is operating in a safe and prudent manner. So I'm a strong advocate of taking care of our environment, but I also realize that, as we do the types of things, we burn coal. I mean, it's just it's a reality of what happens. It happens at the plant, but we've got to store that in the most safe, prudent fashion as we can. And so I don't know how else to answer it, but other than would support that.
John?
We have a variety of environmental issues in the St. Louis area, the Labadie plant being one of those issues. CAFO's another issue. I went to Francis Howell High School. There's a Superfund site right next door, so that is something they cleaned up. I have friends that from North County that grew up next to Coldwater Creek. My mother stays in St. Charles County, and there's the Westlake issue there as well. I think that these are all business-related issues. And when you do business, I think you have a responsibility for the neighborhood, the community around you, be it a CAFO, be it the power plant or so, whatever. And I think we've learned a lot over the last, since the Mallinckrodt thing and making atomic bombs in the 30s and 40s about how and why we would store waste and where we'd store it and what we do with it. But nonetheless, we're about 4 miles or so from the Ameren plant, and the smoke comes out of an unscrubbed smokestack, and we have coal ash laying out in the floodplain. So, of course, it's a concern. If you have out here, and I say out here in the rural areas, a lot of people have a well and septic. So if you have the good fortune of having a well from, say, the St. Albans, the water company, then their well's maybe 1,000 feet down. If you do not have that good fortune, you live around a place that's polluting, and your well is, say, 100 feet down, the pollutants from that field or from wherever those pollutants are laid can very easily seep into your water. I think we just have to keep, this is something we've been doing for a long time. We need to keep wearing away at coming up with renewable fuels, and other energy sources, and it will take time, but I just think we have to, again, with the legislature, we need to keep pressing on it, and hopefully in the near future, we will close plants like the Labadee Power Plant and repurpose it, because we obviously need the energy, and we can turn that over into another industry that will still employ people and give us power, but fewer pollutants in our air, water, and soil.
This is the second to last question. It's also from the audience. What do you think about guns in churches, schools, daycare, bars, etc.? I guess I'll kind of elaborate on that. I think that there has been legislation in the past to maybe loosen local restrictions on those types of things. Beyond just responding to the question, I'll have both of you kind of express your opinion on restricting firearms. And I think, John, you go first on this one.
Sure. I grew up with guns, and I think many of us, and Dave grew up in the country too. I grew up in St. Charles when it was like little, so I had a BB gun. That was kind of my,
St. Charles used to be the country.
It was. St. Charles was kind of like Pacific or Sullivan, I would say. Now it's totally not. But I had my first AZ BB gun when I was in the single digits, which then became a 22 pistol, shotgun, stuff like that as I grew up. So I grew up, we have a farm, and we'd always be on the farm and, go down at the trestle and shooting at things. It was fun, and I was also taught a respect for weapons. So that was before the age of social media or the internet or any of that stuff. And so perhaps there was less of an opportunity for people to share their weapons or their experiences with weapons or their passions about weapons. I personally do not have a problem with guns. I have a problem with people getting shot. We do have probably more of a problem with illegal guns out there that would be accessed by a criminal. We unfortunately also have a problem with legal guns, quote unquote, that are used in either suicide or homicide. I think that we need to do better to make sure that people who have a gun are responsible gun owners. We need to do better with our background checks. We need to close the loopholes that allow people to buy a gun without going through a background check, so that if someone has a gun, be it a pistol or a flamethrower, and I'm being sarcastic somewhat, but that we know that that person is a responsible gun owner that can enjoy sporting, they can shoot targets, they can go out and hunt, they can protect their homes, but we have a pretty good idea that they're responsible gun owners. When it comes to putting it in other spaces, in public spaces, again, my family's all public educators. Even my fussy old dad, who would probably vote for Dave, he would. But he is not fond of the idea of having his teachers, from his experience, having a firearm in the school. I think that perhaps having a resource officer and doing better about having security plans, though unfortunately I hear from a lot of parents that those security plans that are in place, because we do have a worry and a concern about school shootings, actually scare and traumatize the students. So we probably need to address that somehow, but I feel like we have to be judicious in where we can put a weapon, and if somebody doesn't want a weapon where they are, I think we should give them the right and freedom to not have a weapon in their space if that's their desire.
Senator?
Go back to give me your question. I got lost with
It's
pretty lengthy.
The question was, what do you think about guns in churches, schools, daycare, bars, etc.? And then I kind of followed up on that and say, do you support legislation that would make it harder for local governments to restrict guns in those places, and also just giving you a chance to provide your philosophy on gun rights as well? So yes, it was a jumbled question.
Pretty broad question,
yes.
But obviously I've been a strong advocate for the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I believe that law-abiding citizens that are law-abiding, again, typically we don't find ourselves, it's not a problem with people that are law-abiding citizens and the guns. That's not the issue. It's the people that are willing to break the laws. What we really have, and what the problem in our society today is, that we've devalued life to a point where people are getting shot, that we have a problem with that. And we need to address that. Not necessarily, it isn't the weapon that's the problem. It's the heart of the individual that's the problem. If we don't start addressing that, it doesn't make any difference. We take away the guns, they'll use hammers, they'll use cars, use something else to inflict harm and pain and punishment on people. But having a person to be able to protect themselves, I believe, is absolutely inherent for we allow people to be able to do that. Because the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy to have one. And so I'm a strong advocate for the Second Amendment, and I guarantee you that anytime we restrict that, we create environments where people become prey. Anywhere where you have a no-gun zone, a bad guy can go in there and create havoc. They're a whole lot less hesitant to go where they know somebody's going to shoot back. So I think we have to be very careful in how and where we restrict people's access to be able to carry their guns.
This is my final question for you both. What is one thing you think current Governor Mike Parson is doing well? And what is one thing that you would think that he needs improvement on and you may want to work with him on if you're a state senator? I'll start with you, Senator Schatz, who used to serve with the governor in the Senate. So.
Well, it's going to be hard because I think he's doing a lot of things well. But I'll give you a couple, and I'll try to be brief.
Yeah.
His communication with the legislature is going to be fantastic because obviously his relationships that he has forged by serving the time he served there is invaluable in working together across the aisle and bringing consensus together. I think his focus on workforce development, one of the biggest challenges we have facing Missouri right now is have a willing and able and ready workforce. And so he's going to focus on workforce development. He's a strong advocate for infrastructure investment and literally as an employer, the biggest challenge that I find is finding enough people, qualified people, to do the work that we have to get done. Unemployment is an all-time low, and so workforce development is probably the #1 priority, and he's taking that head on. He's going to hopefully make Missouri a place that's very attractive because businesses will not come here and locate unless they have a ready and willing workforce.
John?
Well, and I appreciate that. Dave has worked with the gentleman and in the legislature for a long time. I try to talk to as many people as I can, and I will talk to a Republican. We're all in this together, quite honestly, and I think that politics makes us sometimes very oppositional, and when we're oppositional, we end up with gridlock, and then nothing gets done. I think that's a very big frustration in the government. If we need a better workforce, we need to educate them, and if we're going to educate them, we need to fund the education. We need to make sure that people outside of an area that has good funding for schools or also have funding for their schools to give their kids the opportunity. So if I go from Rockwood schools down to St. Clair and Sullivan and beyond, that those students in those districts are also getting the same kind of education so that they can become a vital part of the workforce. We also need to work on our skilled trades. And I get the impression based on votes in the Senate and the political climate from the GOP that they seem to be very against union labor, and that is my impression and many others. I think that we need to support the trades. I think the trades are a great way to be able to enter into the workforce, not a college path, and still earn a middle class living so that you can have a decent salary, so that you can have a pension. I think these are things that we have to focus on as a state, because I think that when we support all the people and we give all the people an opportunity to get better jobs, to be a better worker, that it will truly make us a better state. But we have to focus, in my opinion, on making sure that people outside of the areas where it's easy to get an education are also getting these opportunities. And I think it's very different, in my opinion, between the urban areas and the rest of the state. We have to do a better job of bringing that together so that everybody has those opportunities to have a middle-class lifestyle.
Thank you guys so much for talking with me today. Feel free to applaud now.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move a bit to the federal level, and we're going to have one of the candidates for the 3rd Congressional District, Katy Geppart. You can give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. So I'm going to give you maybe a minute or two to introduce yourself and give kind of a synopsis of why you're running for Congress. And you can sit down, by the way.
I didn't know if you wanted to do this, inside the actor studio style, like Jason, with the...
Feel free to sit down.
Okay, sure. So hi, I'm Katy Geppart. I am running in the 3rd Congressional District for U.S. Congress. And just to give you a little bit of background about me, I'm a wife, a mother. I'm a native Midwesterner. I grew up in rural and suburban Illinois, right around St. Louis, and I've lived in Missouri for the past 13 years. And my schooling background is I'm a proud public school graduate. I have also gone on to college. I've earned my bachelor's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in chemistry as well. The master's is from St. Louis University. I've been working in industry for the past 14 years, and in those 14 years, I've picked up a lot of skills in terms of problem solving and collaboration within the research that I've been able to do. And I'm also a certified Six Sigma Green Belt, and for those of you who don't know what that is simply a certification process where you go through and do process improvements, method development, and look for ways to fix defects and make processes a lot smoother. So with my background in science and STEM, I think that it kind of makes me uniquely qualified for this position because my job is to literally solve problems every day, big and small. And I'm not naive enough to think that just going to Washington, I can snap my fingers and all of our problems will be solved. But I am trained to look at problems and see where we can make the improvements. But I'm also experienced in working and collaborating with others so that we can take in all of the information and get the best data that we can so that we can make the best decisions for many of the issues going forward. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to run. I saw a lot of opportunities for improvement in our system when it comes to either healthcare or education or ensuring that we have quality jobs that pay a living wage for our people out here. So there are many ways that we can improve in this country, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running.
Thank you very much. And you're running against Republican Blaine Luetkemeyer, the incumbent.
Correct.
He is not here tonight from this. So I'm going to ask you about 3 questions. I want to ask you about Donald Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs, because this is a district where I could see it going both ways. There's a lot of manufacturing in the 3rd Congressional District, but there's also a lot of agriculture. And some of the manufacturers, especially of steel and aluminum, have had mixed reactions to the tariffs. A lot of farmers are really upset about them. So I'd like to hear your opinion on that, because that could be a big issue if you're elected to Congress.
Sure, thank you. From what I've been hearing from both the folks who work in manufacturing, mostly the auto industry, and also from farmers, like you said, they're not happy about what's going on with the tariffs, which essentially are a sales tax increase on us, if we want to think about it that way. The one way that I think we need to that people have expressed is that, especially with the agriculture, with the soybeans, the majority of soybeans that we sell in Missouri go to China, and they've stopped purchasing those. And so there are a lot of farmers who are very nervous about being able to make their ends meet, especially the family farmers, the smaller ones, who don't have a whole lot of leverage with a lot of the larger agricultural companies, and who don't have a lot of leverage with the banks to be able to borrow more money or get what they need so that they can service their vehicles and run their farms the way that they need to run them. When it comes to steel and aluminum tariffs, with the auto industry, I know that that's not something that they've wanted, and because it is going to make it's going to cause a lot of cost increases to their supply chain, depending on where they are making their parts and where they're assembling the vehicles, and so they're not happy about that. Now, overall, I do think that we need to make some improvements in terms of how we work with other companies other countries when it comes to trade, because there are some issues when it comes to making sure that we have good jobs here, that we're not just sending everything overseas. But I do think that in terms of making sure that we have affordable products for people to purchase, the tariffs are not the way to go.
What did you think of the tax cut that President Donald Trump signed into law last year? Would you have voted for it? If so, why would you have voted for it? If not, why do you oppose it?
I do oppose the tax cut that was signed into law this past year, mostly because it more benefits big business than it does the average everyday American. I myself, I did see a little bit of a paycheck increase, but only about $40 a month. And I do understand for those of us who don't make a lot, who essentially live paycheck to paycheck, $40 increase in your monthly paycheck can be a big deal. But those are actually supposed to expire, and also with gas being more expensive and a few other general groceries, everything like that, we're seeing costs go up. That gets eaten away really, really fast. And so, what I would like to see when it comes to tax reform, I'd like to make sure that we start in terms of that we start making sure that people are paying their fair share of taxes. Again, I don't really want to raise anybody's taxes, but I just want to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share. And part of that is because we're looking at, even though we've done the tax increase, we haven't cut spending, so we're going to have a major budget deficit going on. It's going to add, I believe it was $1.7 trillion to the deficit by 2025, I believe was the year. And so, 2028, I believe was the year. And so I really think that we do need some tax reform in this country, but we really need to reassess how we're going to go about that and to ensure that everyone's paying their fair share of taxes.
A couple more questions. What is your opinion of the Affordable Care Act? And even if you support the Affordable Care Act, what would you do to make it better? Because even talking to some Democrats, they can see that there's some deficiencies in the Affordable Care Act that they would want to improve upon. So it's kind of a two-part question, but I think health care is probably one of the more important issues, so I want you to provide a couple minutes about that.
Sure. Well, first of all, as I've gone around the district to talk with potential constituents, that is the biggest thing on their mind. They do not want to lose a lot of the protections that the Affordable Care Act has put into place. For example, they want to make sure that they are protected when it comes to pre-existing conditions. They want to make sure that they're not going to be charged extra, or at least be able to, that their coverage is not going to be cut completely because they have a pre-existing condition. A lot of people are very happy about the fact that they can keep their children on their insurance plan until they're 26. And just so I have a personal experience with that, my brother graduated from college, and basically the day after, he was diagnosed with lymphoma. And he didn't have a job yet, so he didn't really have any insurance options or anything like that. But because my mother's plan allowed him to stay on until he was 26, he's got the coverage that he was able to, that he really needed. And he's been in remission for, I want to say at least 5 or 6 years, I believe. And so that I think it's really important that those protections stay around. But I do support the Affordable Care Act for those particular points, but I do think we can do better. We need to have, where it's going to be difficult, but there are going to be tough conversations that we have to have with healthcare providers, with health insurance providers, in order to bring down costs, because health insurance cost is the #1 thing on people's minds, especially the aging population. And I think one of the ways that we need to look at this is let's take in all the data. Let's see what, based on what the data is telling us, what is going to be the best option and the most affordable, both for the government, who will subsidize some of the healthcare costs, but also for those who don't necessarily qualify for government subsidies. And so, as someone who, like I said, with a science background, I've done a lot with looking at data and looking for data-driven results, as well as collaborating with others. It's going to take a big collaboration between government, healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, and health insurance companies in order for us to make sure that we have a working healthcare system in this country. Now, I think one of the things that we need to look at, this may not necessarily be the answer, is a Medicare for All option. I would really like to see how the numbers crunch for that, and whether or not that's going to be fiscally responsible and sustainable for this country. I also think that one of the things that we could look at in terms of health coverage is to see if the government could subsidize maybe the primary care and the preventative type care chronic conditions for people where those are easily treatable or commonly treated diseases. I'm sorry if I'm stumbling. The lights up here are a little distracting.
What happened with the lights? They just turned like bronze. Do we look like bronze statues right here?
Yeah.
Finish your thought before I get to the last question.
No, thank you. And so when it comes to healthcare, there are certainly improvements we can make to the Affordable Care Act, and I think that is when it comes to what this is, affordable is the key word that we need to look at, and I'm ready to have the tough conversations that we need to have with the healthcare community, and making sure that everyone has access to it, whether it's that includes mental health and addiction treatment services. I think those are really important aspects to our overall healthcare that for the longest time have been neglected, and I think we're starting to talk about it more, which is great, but it's still not necessarily incorporated into our overall healthcare plans.
My last question is from the audience. With the United States Supreme Court in the spotlight lately, is there more than one decision the court has made that you disagree with? I'll give you a chance to maybe say one or two decisions that you have disagreements with, and why.
So first of all, the Janus decision that came out over this last session, I definitely disagree with. I come from a union home. Both my parents were in unions, and so I think having ensuring that people who are part of unions are paying their union dues is really important to ensure that they have proper representation they have their union management there to support them also when it comes to the collective bargaining process. Because if those two things can't be supported, then it makes unions almost ineffective. And I've known firsthand that in terms of what unions mean to the middle class, it means steady wages. Both my parents had solid, steady wages. It means health insurance. It means that there is someone who can help fight for you if you have a sexual harassment claim. Unions, to me, also mean that you're getting equal pay for equal work, and that's one of the only situations that I've had experience with in my 14-year career. Is when, and I've never joined a union because there's never been a union for me to join necessarily, but when I see my coworkers who work in the manufacturing side of the chemical and ag industry that I work in, they're able to get, because they can collectively bargain, they can all work together, they are able to get better benefits, get better pay. And so I think it's really important that we ensure that if you are benefiting from being in the union, that you are paying your fair share of wages, or your fair share of dues.
Thank you very much for your time. Give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. Can I just, what time is it right now? What time is it right now? 7. Okay. All right, the next office we have is State Auditor. Before we bring up one of our guests who's here today, I do want to read a statement from Democratic incumbent Nicole Galloway, who has provided a statement. Thank you for hosting a forum to hear from candidates running for office. I have the honor of serving as your state auditor, an independent watchdog making sure government is accountable to the people. In just over 3 years, my audits have identified over $300 million in government waste, fraud, abuse, and mismanagement. More than 35 criminal counts have been brought against corrupt public officials as a result of my office's work. I am a CPA and a certified fraud examiner. I started in public service as Boone County Treasurer because I wanted to have the skills, wanted to use the skills I developed in the private sector to improve the community around me. Currently, I live in Columbia with my husband, John, and our 3 little boys, William, Benjamin, and Joseph. I think a lot about the future of our state and what it will be for my family and yours. I know that people work hard for what they have. They work hard to provide an opportunity for themselves and their families, and they expect government to live within its means, be responsible with taxpayer money, and have a balanced checkbook. They also expect government to maintain the public trust. Every day I hold government entities, large and small, accountable with this in mind. You can learn more or contact me from my campaign website, NicoleGalloway.com. Follow me on Facebook which is Nicole Galloway CPA, and on Twitter at Nicole R. Galloway. So that's Auditor Galloway's statement. Republican Sandra McDowell is also running, but she is not here tonight. So we are going to bring up the Constitution Party candidate, Jacob Luetkemeyer. And feel free to have a seat, just like the last candidate.
All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak with everybody. My name is Jacob Luetkemeyer. I'm the Constitution Party candidate for state auditor, as mentioned. Just a little bit about me. I've been married for 15 years. I have 8 children. I've got a bachelor's degree from Columbia College in business administration with an emphasis in accounting. And while going to school, I started a retail business. It was a family business. And with that business, I was able to develop my own accounting software and develop my own point-of-sale software and analytics software with that to help make my business more efficient. As corporations began getting into the niche market that I was in, profit margins started to fall, and I decided to get out of the business. I sold the business, and for the last 6 years, I have worked at IBM in the Security Compliance Division. I've held several roles within that division, and currently I do data analytics. I've done automation development, as well as audit and compliance for a little over 400 clients around North America. So why do I want to be the next state auditor? Well, when I was kind of researching this office late last year, I seen that we have only been auditing like 3, maybe 5% of the audit of the entities in the state. And I noticed that, and I was reading that we hadn't updated the office in over 40 years. It's been a business as usual position. People are going in, they're focused on just what they can do, and they have not spent any time to try to make improvements in the overall way that the office is running. And so I believe that with my diverse background in business, analytics, accounting, and IT, that I can go in and actually have a different look on the office as far as stepping back and reviewing the accounting system that we're using statewide across the state agencies as well as the political subdivisions, and as well as look at from a process standpoint and as well as from a technological standpoint. I believe we have a lot of technological advances that have occurred over the last 40 years, and I believe that we can do a lot better than 3 to 5% of the offices being audited. I believe people want to see where their money's going. Before we increase any more taxes, I believe people want to see exactly how the money's being managed. It's really difficult to want to hand hard-earned money over to agencies where we really can't see where that money's going. So that's the main reason why I want to run. I really want to bring Missourians a much better solution into the office.
I'm going to ask you a couple questions. I think the number one question in this race is your opinion on the Clean Missouri Initiative, which was mentioned in a prior candidate forum. Primarily, the reason why this affects the auditor is the auditor would be tasked with basically getting candidates to be the state demographer that would draw state House and state Senate districts under a certain criteria. It's in flux right now. I mean, literally, it was heard in appeals court today. I would assume, regardless of that decision, it's going to get appealed to the Supreme Court. I don't know if the decision has come in. I don't have my cell phone with me. What's your opinion about Clean Missouri?
Well, I kind of approached that initiative whenever, in the same way that I approach in my current position. In my current position, we actually take a look at how different teams are participating in a process, and we say, okay, we want to make sure that each team is only fulfilling the responsibility that they fulfill. And when I was looking at this initiative, the biggest section that's under controversy with this, with Clean Missouri, is the fact that the auditor is going to get this new authority. And when you look at that, it really takes a lot of the responsibility and puts it into the auditor's office. And I believe it's too much responsibility. I believe that with the constitutional authority that the auditor has is only to deal with the system of accounting and to deal with the auditing of the income and expenditures. I believe the only area of this the demographics as far as drawing the boundaries would be maybe a cost analysis. So I believe that if we were going to have an initiative like this where we give the auditor a little more authority, I believe that authority should only exist in the matter that it would be for a cost analysis and not the entire beginning of the process all the way to handing the 3 options to another agency.
One of the former Republican candidates for this office, State Representative Paul Kurtman, one of the things that he mentioned he wanted to do, and he was unsuccessful in his race for the Republican nomination, was actually try to follow through on some of the audits by going to legislators and trying to get them to pass deficiencies in certain departments that the auditor's office finds. What's your thought about that? It seems like a common sense solution, but actually following through on that could be difficult just because of how the legislature works. I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah, definitely. When I've reviewed the current audits, I see kind of a lack of detail. So what I'd like to see is a lot more detail in these audits, and I believe that you could go to the General Assembly, and if you had a lot more detail and you could provide maybe better direction as to how money could be allocated or managed. And I do believe that we currently have a deficiency in the auditor's office working with the General Assembly in the matter of trying to come up with better solutions that are more cost effective. And I believe that the auditor's office, one of the jobs that they have is to do this kind of cost analysis on top of auditing. It's not just making sure that the books all, everything matches and that we can see where all the money's going, but it's also to take a look at our current economic situation and analyze how can we do better, how can we manage this better, and I definitely agree that we need to spend more time with the General Assembly.
Last question for you. What sort of duties would you want to add to the auditor's portfolio to make that office a more effective statewide entity?
One of the biggest areas of concern that people have had, and I've had a lot of people ask me, say a mayor or a county official, the people petition to try to get an audit performed, and then that official refuses the audit, which they have the right to do because that entity has to pay for the audit. And if the funds aren't available or if there's a better use of funds, I can understand why those officials would say, no, we're going to refuse this audit. I believe that if we can put together a more standardized approach to offer these entities to make it more cost effective, I believe that the auditor's office should have a little more authority in going in and being able to access those records and performing audits, but that would only be based on implementing first a more cost-effective method of doing so.
Thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you so much. All right, we have our next race where both candidates are here. It's the 61st District House race between Aaron Griesheimer and Pamela Menefee. So, round of applause. And again, I'm just going to ask, you can applaud after their opening statements, but please hold your applause until after we're done. I want to try to get in as many questions as humanly possible. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to have Pamela go first with the opening statement. Try to keep it between 1 and 2 minutes.
Okay. My name is Pamela Menefee. I have lived in Franklin County since I was 10 years old. I went to Londale Elementary School. I graduated from St. Clair High School. I went to Mizzou for several years. I graduated from there. I moved back to Washington, where I met my husband, Ed Menefee, who's the chief of police in Washington. We have 5 children together, all of whom we're very proud. I believe that people like us need to have our voices heard in Jefferson City, people who have led normal, sometimes challenging lives. I worked for the Division of Family Services for 18 years. I investigated child abuse and neglect hotlines. Prior to that, I was a dispatcher with the Sheriff's Department. So I know about how important health care is, how important or how difficult it is to raise children economically, and that's why I think that I would do a good job representing you for the 61st District.
Thank you, Pamela. Aaron?
I'm going to stand. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Aaron Griesheimer, and I'm the Republican candidate for State Representative in District 61. I'm a lifelong resident of the city of Washington. I'm a graduate of St. Francis Borgia Regional High School, and I'm a graduate of East Central College, class of '04 right here. I then went on to Southeast Missouri State University, where I earned my bachelor's degree. But more importantly, I also earned my wife's hand in marriage. I've been married to my wife, Amanda, for 12 years, and we have 2 beautiful children, Dayton and Tucker, and they can be a handful at times, as some of you parents know. You know, I had the opportunity to work in Jefferson City for 7 years, and it afforded me the opportunity to work with both Democrats and Republicans, and that's so important, especially if you want to push legislation across the finish line. You've got to have that working relationship, and ladies and gentlemen, I have that experience, and I appreciate your vote, and thank you so much for being here.
Feel free to applaud. Also, St. Francis Borgia is the school of local legend Brock Olivo,
right,
who is now doing a great job as the assistant special teams coach for the Chicago Bears. Give it up for Brock, everybody. Now let's turn to issues, and the first one that I'm going to do is from the audience. It's a lengthy question about broadband and the lack of broadband, especially in rural areas. The 61st District is a primarily rural district, although it does have part of the city of Washington in it. What would you do as a legislator to expand broadband access in your district and throughout Missouri? I'll start with Mr. Griesheimer first.
Yeah, it's very important that we continue to expand broadband, especially in our rural areas, more for the benefit of our children for school purposes. You know, I would definitely support legislation that would push broadband internet into our rural areas. I think it's also important that we push competitors into the rural areas as well. I know there's some areas in the district, as I've been knocking door to door, I've learned that there are some areas where there's only one broadband provider, and I think it's so important that we continue to push competition as well to bring down the cost of internet.
Pamela?
Broadband is very important to rural districts. Broadband allows us to do telemedicine, but you have to have access to the internet, high-speed access. You can also have more educational opportunities if you have internet access. Our rural schools are disadvantaged by not having internet access. Companies won't move to rural areas because there's no internet access, so again, it's very important. In the 1930s, 90% of urban dwellers had electricity, but 90% of rural residents did not. They formed electric cooperatives to get everyone electrified. In Illinois and Oklahoma, they're doing the same thing. They're using those electric cooperatives to expand broadband. And in Southeast Missouri, they're also doing that. So that's something that we could do here in the 61st District by using our electric cooperatives and hopefully partnering with Ameren UE also to expand broadband. It needs to be part of our infrastructure. It's very important to the rural areas that we all have access to the internet.
I'm going to ask you both about another ballot initiative that's on the ballot, which admittedly is a redundant way to ask this question. What is your opinion of the proposition to raise the minimum wage eventually to $12 an hour by 2023? I'll start with Pamela.
Okay. I support that initiative. Wages are stagnant in the United States right now. And one of the reasons it's stagnant is that our unions have been weakened continuously by legislators who pass legislation, like right to work, to weaken it. They also passed legislation this past session that weakened our public sector unions. So we don't have anybody to push back against businesses to increase our wages. One of the ways we can increase wages for everyone, though, is by raising the minimum wage. So I certainly support that initiative.
I have no issue with anybody making a decent wage. I think we constantly have to be mindful, though, and this is Business Economics 101. Anytime you have wages go up, you also have inflation that's right behind it as well. And so when you have that occur, you're not really gaining any ground. I have no problem, again, with anybody making a good wage, but I think we just need to continue to be mindful of that.
So another issue that I think is going to become pretty prevalent in the 2019 session is tax credits. I've known from my experience of reporting here that the historic preservation tax credit has been especially important in the Washington area. And currently the low-income housing tax credit, which has been important throughout the state, is currently frozen right now with the expectation that the legislature is going to make a host of changes to that. So it's kind of a broader question. What's kind of your opinion of these two particular tax credits? Are there anything that you would do to change them? And do you have an issue with the tax credits as far as how much money they take from the budget for services? I'll start with Aaron.
Yeah, we have to be careful when anytime we give tax credits. I am supportive of historical tax credits, though. They have helped the Washington community and other communities as well in the district, in District 61. It's a good opportunity to create jobs as well as the boost in economic development sometimes that it provides. Again, we have to be careful with how much tax credits we provide, though, because we have to make sure we can continue to fund the entities that our general budget funds.
Pamela?
And I would agree with that, basically. Historical tax credits, I think, are good, but we do have to be careful. Part of what has happened in Jefferson City is they've cut taxes so much over and over again to where it's really left us with a bare bones budget, and so we can't get some things accomplished that we really need to get accomplished, like our school systems. There are schools, schools in Missouri, rural Missouri, that are going 4 days a week because they can't afford to go 5. So taking any more money out of our budget could be detrimental to a lot of services.
That actually parlays well into my next question. Would you support any policy that takes tax dollars and provides some sort of way to use it to pay for private schools? It's usually called vouchers. Sometimes it's done through tax credits. I'll start with Pamela.
I support public education, and there is a finite amount of resources that are available to our schools right now, so I would not support anything that took any money out of the public education system. Again, we have schools that are going 4 days a week. Teachers are some of the lowest paid teachers in the United States. Teachers should be paid like the professionals that they are. So I would not support anything that would take additional money out of the public education system.
Aaron?
I'm really undecided on that one. I think you have to look at the 61st District and really look at how the schools are funded. If you look at the Washington School District, for example, believe it or not, 75% of its budget is actually funded through property taxes, and the rest of it comes from state and federal funds. But that's different when you go to New Haven or you go to Herman. So I think you really have to pay attention to that. There's no one, I don't think, right answer to that question because all the school districts are funded so differently.
Couple more questions. When I was talking with your father, Aaron, on Politically Speaking.
Oh boy.
One of the things that he mentioned was a big issue was transportation in Franklin County. And we talked a little bit about the gas tax increase, which may or may not pass. What would you do, especially if that gas tax increase does not pass, to try to bring more funding for roads and bridges in Franklin County? Because as we said before, I think this is probably one of the issues that everyday Franklin Countyans worry about more than anything else. So I'll start with you, Aaron.
Man, that's a hard question. I hope we don't get into that situation because I think with transportation, I always say, I think you get a little bit more of your investment back, what you put into it. And I always say Highway 47 is a good example of that. When we're able to expand Highway 47 from a 2-lane to a 4-lane highway in 2010, we were able to attract stores like Kohl's and Target, which my wife absolutely loves. But I, as a resident, enjoy that tax revenue that we gain from the sales taxes. And then we get to use that and put that towards our parks and other entities as well. One thing I would like to see as well is Highway 47 expanded as well from a 2-lane to a 4-lane highway. I mean, the congestion issues there's safety issues there. That's a tough question. I really don't have the answer for that one. I've got to look more into that.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay, Pamela.
Well, let's hope the tax passes, because it needs to. And part of that, why it's so difficult is because they've cut taxes so much that they've left us in a position where we've had to ask for a gas tax increase, and if that doesn't pass, then it puts us in a difficult position of not being able to repair our roads and bridges unless we ask for a tax increase. So it is a very difficult position that we as citizens in Missouri have been put in. We have to repair our roads and bridges, not only for safety reasons, but businesses won't come here if we don't have adequate transportation systems. Tourists won't come to Missouri if our roads and bridges are unsafe. So it's something that we have to get taken care of. So I'm hopeful that the tax increase passes.
My last question for both of you is kind of a big one. It's on health care. One of the things that has been a lingering issue in Missouri, especially rural Missouri for years, is how to connect the working poor with health care, especially since Medicaid percentage is pretty low in the state. As a representative, what would you try to do to deliver health care, whether it be private insurance or government health care through the Medicaid program, to people that may not qualify for Medicaid right now? I'll start with, who did I start? I'll start with Pamela first.
I support expanding Medicaid. When I worked with the Division of Family Services, I worked with many families, and often they didn't have health insurance. And it puts you in a very difficult position when you don't have health insurance. You might not take your child to the doctor when they need to go. You yourself might not go to the doctor when you need to. And I believe that Missourians should be able to go to the doctor when they need to, not just when they can afford to. So I would support expanding Medicaid and eventually looking into a single-payer healthcare system. When we talked earlier about internet access, one of the advantages or the things that you can do there is with telemedicine. That would keep the cost down of people visiting the doctor. They wouldn't have to drive such huge distances. So that's another reason why we need internet access.
Aaron?
I too support expanding Medicaid, but the problem is we just don't have the money to do it. You know, there's a lot of good resources out there, but again, the funding is just not there. I would absolutely love if everybody could get the resources they need to live a better, healthy life, but we have to be mindful of the money that we have and how much we use to spend it.
May I respond just shortly?
Okay, and then I might give Aaron a chance to respond to the response. So.
The government already pays 67% of people their health insurance through Medicaid and Medicare. For just a little bit more, we could pay for everyone's, because we would eliminate all the bureaucracy that's needed. And if you filed an insurance claim, you know that bureaucracy is long and tedious. So if we eliminated all of that, we eliminated the need for insurance companies to make money, we could cover everyone. So it wouldn't be a big financial burden to do that. And that's something that we should consider doing.
All right, hold your applause. Hold your applause. Aaron, I want you to have the last word.
To be fair, I think that's easier said than done. I mean, it's something that we could take a look at, but I think that would take a lot of work. I don't know if that's necessarily the solution either, but we could take a look at it.
Thank you both, and now you can do your round of applause. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the next two candidates. It's the 109th district between John Simmons and James Cordrey. So please come up to the stage. Thank you very much. And just like the last two candidates, I'm going to give you 1 or 2 minutes to do an opening statement, and then I'm going to ask you all 5 questions. So I will start with John Simmons first.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is John Simmons. I'm running for the 109th. My wife, Nancy, and I, we live in Krakow. We have 3 children. My son, Reagan, who's 23, daughter, Madison, who's 19, and Noah's 15, who's finishing up a soccer game at St. Francis Borgia. We're members at St. Gertrude. That's where I sent my kids to grade school there. And then they went to Borgia to follow in their mom's footsteps, who graduated from Borgia High School. The first two, Reagan and Madison, are at Truman. Reagan graduated last year. Madison's a second year there now, and Noah is a second year at Borgia High School. I'm a chiropractic physician in Washington. I've been there for 25 years. My wife and I just also celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary earlier this summer. So I've been in Missouri around 30 years. Basically, the reason I'm running is I want to protect and respect the values of people here in Franklin County. I've lived here for close to 30 years. I appreciate the kind of people that are here and the kind of values that they have, and I want to make sure they have good representation.
Thank you very much. James?
Hi, everybody. My name is James Cordrey. I'm running for 109 State Rep, just like Mr. Simmons here. And for anyone who doesn't know, that covers Union, about half of Washington, Labadie, Clover Bottom, Bowles, Gray Summit, Villa Ridge, a bit of Robertsville, a tiny sliver of Pacific, all the way up to St. Albans along the Missouri River. My family has been in this area for generations. My grandfather is currently living on the family farm that his dad built several years ago. My aunt and uncle ran the White Rose Cafe here for about 20 years. My mother was born in Washington. My grandmother and my great-grandmother were born in Gerald, and I've got some real deep ties to Franklin County. When my fiance and I decided we were going to find a place to live, we were looking at moving to St. Louis, but I took a shot at coming back to Union, where I lived when I was a child for a few years, and I also lived in Herman, Missouri for a few years as a child. Because I remembered it being a friendly place. And every time I visited family up here, it's always been a friendly place where people know that we want to take care of our neighbors and we want to help support our friends and family. And that's part of the reason why I'm running. I want to help people out. I want to help my neighbors. I want to help my friends, and I want to help my family. And I want to help you, and I want to work for you. And there's a lot that we've got to get done. Okay, there's more to do than just a couple of things. And some of the things I want to work on is healthcare, because everyone needs healthcare. That's not a question. I want to help protect public education. Our foundation formula is broken. It doesn't cover transportation right now, and how can you hold a school accountable, their funding accountable for how many students attend, if you don't also help them get students to school? I want to help improve local jobs, and I want to focus on infrastructure, and I've got plans for that, and they're both on my website, which is www.jamescordray.com. And I have a lot of stuff that I want to do, and I hope Jason asks us a lot of questions about it, because I want to tell you about the plans that I have for Franklin County and how we can move forward together. Again, my name is James Cordrey. Thank you.
Thank you. I admit this first question is a bit heavy, but it comes from the audience, and it does kind of correspond with what people will vote on in Jefferson City, so I am going to ask it. I was sexually assaulted. 60 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant. I made the decision to have an abortion. Do you support that constitutional right for women to make their own choices with their doctors? So in other words, do you support the right to an abortion, and including in the scenario that I just laid out? I'll start with James.
Whoever asked that question, thank you so much for asking it. That took a lot of bravery, and I want to say that I'm sorry that you had to go through that. That's a terrible situation. Nobody ever wants to have an abortion, and there's not anyone who's a pro-abortion candidate that I've ever met. So I want to get that out of the way first. Secondly, I do support your right to make that choice about your own body's autonomy. That's called liberty in this state, and that's called liberty in this country, is being able to make your own choices, okay? Being able to make a choice for yourself is the basic human right, and it's the basis of human dignity, is being able to make your own choices. So while I feel like that is a terrible situation, and it is a horrible, just absolutely horrible process that you had to go through, and it's a horrible situation that you had to that you were put in, that you didn't put yourself there, but it was a horrible situation that you were put in. I would fight to make sure that you had the ability to make that decision as needed. I mean, that's the basis of liberty in this country, is being able to make your own choices and choose your own destiny. So that's my answer.
John.
Yeah, very sad situation, and very sorry for what you did have to go through. But when you talk about liberty, I am pro-life, and I'm for the liberty of that unborn person. Unfortunately, the circumstance that created that is horrific. Don't have a great answer for that because those are very extreme examples that come up, and they're real examples that obviously happened to you. But we have to defend life. And there's not an easy answer to that situation, but we have to find ways to defend that unborn life, and I'm always going to support that.
Thank you. So one of the things that I think is kind of a bread and butter issue for state legislators is economic development. I'd be interested to hear your philosophy on using state government resources to promote economic development, especially here in Franklin County. I'll start with John.
Well, it has a lot of areas that it can affect, especially through education here at the college here and what they provide in their trade schools and their training in the skills, and what we have with the State Technical College out in Lynn. Some of the funding that we do for community colleges like this is a great resource, and Governor Parsons is very much inclined to do things towards that kind of training for those kinds of job opportunities. Not everybody has to go to a four-year college. Not everyone has to go to Mizzou or SLU or Wash U. There's a lot of value. My nephews, I had family members and patients that have come through this institution. My wife's a graduate here and can pursue those kinds of pursuits in the trades. And so some of the education funding can and should go for that. Transportation and the improvements on Highway 47, the expansion of that, the intersection of Highway 47 and 50, that's an economic development issue because we need to get commerce to and from places efficiently. We also have that safety for our bus drivers and the kids that are on those buses and all the stops that they have to take with people turning left or right on Highway 47. That's a dangerous situation, so make sure we have full transportation funding and find ways for that. And our tax policy. If we can grow the economy, grow our state economy, President Trump showed what we can do with deregulation and cutting taxes to the federal program and the growth that we see with that. We need to do the same kind of things here in deregulation, sensible deregulations here in the state, and you'll see the economic growth that we want.
And just a reminder, please hold your applause or any reactions till after the questions are finished. We want to make sure that we get as many in as possible. James, and the question is to you.
So there's a lot there to unpack. Mr. Simmons brought up a lot of things that I want to talk about, so I'm going to try and talk about them as quickly as I can. I'm going to try and give you some specifics about it. First of all, insofar as an economic policy plan, I have a plan on my website about how we can help improve the creation of small local businesses in every community that has a community college in it. I've spoken with Dr. Bauer here. I would love to make East Central Community College a pilot program for this. Missouri State University does it, and it's called an incubator program, where they help offer infrastructure discounts to startup businesses. And that's going to be very important if the minimum wage increase happens, because that's going to increase the cost it takes to start up a small business. So being able to offer reduced prices for an investment in the business for things like accounting services or infrastructure, specifically like buildings, telephone lines, internet communication, desks, meeting spaces, things like that, is going to be very important for economic development. Secondly, we do have something that's going to be coming up in the next 2 years for Missouri, and Mr. Simmons mentioned it, and that's the Highway 47, Highway 50 interchange. And we definitely need to work at fixing that, and that's going to cost about $2 million to the county, $1 million for Union, $1 million for the county, if they can get the matching federal grants that they want, and I would definitely be a proponent for doing that. And then there's going to be about $10 to $14 million that the state's going to have to pony up for that as well. But the state is also already looking into doing that, and we've already started drawing up plans for that. So I think that that's definitely something that the state representatives should be involved in and helping push for. We also have a number of issues in the area for infrastructure changes and our tax policy for that. And so the gas tax that's coming up, I do support that, and I definitely want to see that happen. I would like to see a more equitable split between infrastructure spending and funding the highway patrol. I don't know how much the state had wiggle room the state had whenever they drafted that proposal, but about 66% of the funds are, from my looking at it, based on the amount that's going to come in, will go to the State Highway Patrol. And Franklin County can expect maybe $200,000 to $300,000 a year coming in from that, I believe. I may be off on that figure, so please don't quote me on that one as being super specific. But the last thing I want to talk about is our income tax policy. Missouri has one of the worst setup income tax policies that is designed to make sure that every single person at the very lowest level is paying income taxes whenever it's not beneficial for them to do so. I have a new tax policy that I'm going to be putting on my website within the next couple of weeks on what I would like to see Missouri's income tax brackets changed to. Right now we have 8 of them, and I'd like to see it dropped to 4. And I'd like to see anyone making below poverty level wages not paying a single cent in income taxes, because if you put more money in people who are in the pockets of people who are living paycheck to paycheck, you're going to see significant economic development. So that's what I'd like to do.
Since I'm giving a ballot initiative to each candidate, I'm going to ask each of you of your opinions about the medical marijuana initiatives. I'm not going to ask you specifically about each one because they're different and they have different taxation. But generally, what is your opinion about legalizing medical marijuana in Missouri? I'll start with James.
So there are 2 amendments on the ballot and one proposition. One proposition only takes effect if the amendment that it's backing up fails. One of them was pushed by Dr. Bradshaw, who's based in the Springfield, Missouri area, and it basically sets him up as a drug czar for research, and it puts a 15% tax on the sale of medical marijuana in the state, and there's not a lot of specifics, and it really just seems to be a way for him to line his pockets. So I don't support that particular amendment at all. The other amendment, which has a 4% sales tax on it for any medical marijuana, will also put a lot of usefulness into our current research. And I don't know if a lot of people know a lot about marijuana. I don't know that much about it. I've never used it in my life, but I've known people who have. And the thing about medical marijuana is that it doesn't have to get you high. There's this thing in it called CBD, which is the psychotropical, I don't know the vernacular, and I'm sorry. But CBD does not get you high, but it is specifically for pain management. And I think that is something that we absolutely need, given that we have a huge opioid crisis in our state. Anything that we can do to help pull people off of OxyContin or any of the harder drugs out there would be super beneficial for us. So I do support medical marijuana coming to the state, and I hope it would also open up the doorway for industrial hemp being grown as well, because that gets super stigmatized because it's related to marijuana.
John, same question to you.
Well, Paul Kurtman passed legislation where hemp is going to be able to be grown, so that will be something that's going to come to Missouri. Medical marijuana does have a usefulness. It's research has shown that the oils and the different versions that come into the compounds can have that benefit on some of the extreme cases of different medical conditions. The challenge with these initiatives, and there are a lot of variations to them, is usually the medical marijuana is the big toe in the tent that eventually gives us to the recreational use. It starts with medical marijuana, and then we kind of get used to that, we get comfortable with that, and then it's down into something later on, which I'm opposed to. And there's no language specifically in these ballot measures that say that there's restrictions on that usage. Because if you follow what's going on in Colorado, you talk to the law enforcement there, they tell you it's a nightmare that's happening down through that. So that's why in those specific issues, those ballot measures or the amendment issues, not in favor of, because it doesn't have some of the restrictions for eventually the recreational use.
So I want to ask about ethics overhaul. We talked a little bit about Clean Missouri with Mr. Luetkemeyer. Let's just say it doesn't make the ballot, and a lot of the ethics-related items that curtail lobbyist gifts, make small changes to campaign finance, and close the revolving door between legislators and lobbyists. Just give me your general philosophy on how you would want to overhaul some of the ethical regulations in Jefferson City. I'll start with John.
Yeah, I think, ethics reform is a good thing because you want to make sure there's not that influence or undue influence. you know, lobbyists can kind of be both a good word and a bad word because we all have lobbyists. As a chiropractic profession, we have lobbyists. The school here, East Central, and education has lobbyists. The carpenters, they have lobbyists. And part of that is providing information to the legislatures. As a physician, I'm trained to listen to my patients and try to figure out what's the best course of action for them. I think I can take that quality of listening well and listen to my constituents, listen to the stakeholders, listen to experts, whether they be lobbyists who can provide information, and as long as you're providing that information to help you determine what is the best course of action in legislation. And so, you know, in terms of lobbyist bans or gift bans or 2-year wait period before you have to serve, I'm all for those kinds of reforms. The problem with Clean Missouri is they tied that into the redistricting and the map, and you know, because it's a multiple issue thing, that's one of the reasons why the court, you know, kicked it out, and we'll see what happens with that over the next couple of days.
James.
So one of the things that I used to do is I'm a software developer and a data analyst, and I work with a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions on what they want software to work as, and I did data analytics for Hewlett-Packard for a couple of years. And so I know how to dig down into a situation, look at data, and come up with a solution. And that's something I think that we definitely need to do when it comes to ethics reform. If you have a situation where it seems like someone is taking advantage of their position for personal gain, then we need to make sure that we have a watchdog involved that can actually focus on dropping the hammer on them specifically, so that they can get so that it can get corrected. One of the things that I hear a lot about it, and this is something that applies to a lot of different things, like people talk about gun control in the form of bans and whatnot. And what you really need to do is you need to look at an issue, each individual issue, and you need to drill down into a specific cause, and then you need to fix that cause. So as your representative, that's exactly what I would do. If we've got a problem, and we do, with legislators becoming lobbyists and basically passing laws before they get a job with the promise of getting a job, we need to make sure that is exposed to sunshine and disinfected the way that it should be. And we can do that in a number of ways. There are certain technologies that we can implement. We can make requirements of the legislature so that whenever they do any official communication, it has to be done through official means that have the ability to be sunshined. We can also make it a responsibility that every single social media account that you use is open to sunshine laws for the period of time that you were a legislator as well. And that was an ethics concern with Eric Greitens, is that he was using his personal Facebook page as a campaign page, and he was skirting sunshine laws with that. And that's definitely something we need to sew that up and fix.
My last question is going to be open-ended. If you had a chance to pass one piece of legislation that you think would make the state better, what would it be in 1 or 2 minutes? I'll start with James.
I am so glad you asked that question. I've been looking to talk about this in front of a large group of people for a while. It would be voting reform. Right now, we have a disenfranchised voting base of about 1/3 of the country, and that's a little higher in Missouri, I believe, who doesn't turn up to vote. And they do that because they don't feel like there's a candidate that represents them. And I was speaking with Mr. Luetkemeyer before we came back here and talked about it, and third-party candidates have an extremely difficult time getting elected because we have an adversarial voting system that gives you one vote, one voice. That's the tagline for it. But it's not really a vote that's effective if only 3% of the people are going to vote for your candidate. So what we can do is we can switch over to ranked choice voting. All right, we can switch over to ranked choice voting, which allows you to rank the candidates on the ballot, and if your top choice doesn't win, if they have the least votes, it knocks it off and goes to your second vote. And the way that makes Missouri better is it gives us candidates who are going to appeal to a larger base of the state. We are going to get candidates who actually represent everyday people, at least to some extent, so that everyone is more happy with the candidates they get. Maine is doing this right now, and it's working out beautifully for them, and I definitely think Missouri should be a nationwide leader on putting ranked choice voting in place.
John, what would be the one bill that you would want to pass?
Just to tag on to James, there is some legislation that's been proposed. It hasn't seen the light of day yet, but there's a state representative that's trying to work on that. So you may see that actually come to fruition. I'd like to see some reform with the welfare system. Someone that's an able-bodied worker doesn't need to be taking advantage of that system. We really need to truly help those who truly need that help in some of the welfare system and the funding that we need to give them, and make sure that they have that help that they need. But the ones that are taking advantage of the system, I want to make sure that there's a little more reform to that.
I'd like to follow up to that for just a second, because
just remember, if you follow up, he gets to follow up
and that's
to you.
fine. If you want to do true welfare reform, we already have the tools in place that we need to be able to do any kind of welfare reform, so we could actually study this problem like it needs to be. Unfortunately, the legislature hasn't actually passed the implementation of any of those tools, which as a software developer, I've built tools similar to this that we can use to actually audit these situations, so we can find people who are making abuse. A common one that you hear about is food stamp abuse, where people are going and they're buying lobster or whatever, and that's blatantly not true. There was a study in Missouri a couple of years ago that followed people for a couple of years and watched what foods they were buying, and overall, like 70%, 85% of the money was being spent on nutritious food. So if you're serious about welfare reform, you need someone in office who's going to be able to help push for tools that are going to make sure that we can actually study the problem and find real solutions for it.
John, you have the last word on this.
Thanks for agreeing with me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we have two races left. I'm sorry. We have two races left, and they're both situations where, can we fix the mic really quick? They're races where only one of the candidates is here. So I'm going to ask them each 4 questions, and then you all can talk with the candidates outside the auditorium. So we're going to do the 110th district with Dottie Bailey, the Republican nominee. The Democratic nominee, Cody Kelly, is not here tonight. So please welcome Dottie Bailey. Thank you. So like all the other candidates, I'm going to give you a minute or so to introduce yourself, and then I'm going to ask you 4 questions.
Okay. I'm Dottie Bailey. I'm running in the 110, which is all of Eureka, a little bit of Ellisville, a little bit of Wildwood, and a little bit of Franklin County, which is Pacific in that area. A little bit about me. I've got 2 kiddos, 10 and 8, and you're probably asking, how did I get to this position? I ask myself that quite a bit lately, but it's kind of an organic process that took place over the past 15, 20 years. I've always been that person that calls my legislator and says, hey, why are you voting for this? Or, hey, will you please vote for this, both state and federal. I've done some grassroots work, showed up, to the State House, being a citizen lobbyist, if you will. And I always think that's a really important thing that a lot of people miss is it's the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, so we're supposed to be a part of it. And I wish more people would get involved, so I appreciate that you're here tonight. But kind of how I got here, I'm an old Tea Party person, if you guys remember the Tea Party back in 2008, 2009. And that's where they really got involved and started showing up to things and, again, addressing my legislators, both state and federal. And we did a lot of activities, both protests and other things where we would push legislation. And so it's just kind of my passion. It's what I do on the side, and I enjoy it, and I think it's very important that we be involved. So fast forward a few years, in March I got a phone call, and it was our committee woman, and she said, Kirk Matthews isn't going to run again in your district. I'm like, oh man, Kirk's a great guy. He's done a great job. And I said, okay, well, who are you thinking about? And she said, well, how about you? And so after I picked up the phone off the floor, I said, give me a few days and I'll think about it. And so obviously I said yes. So here I am tonight, and coming from the Tea Party and working within those groups of people that I've met, I've learned that limited government is the best government. I'm a true believer when the government gets off your back with regulation, red tape, then human flourishing can rise. And I'm a person that likes lower taxes, and You know, that's no, I don't hide that at all. And, you know, when you have more money in your pocket, revenue goes up at the state and federal level, the economy flourishes, the free market opens up, and we're just all a little bit better for it. So that's a little bit about me.
That'll be my first question about taxes. There were a couple of tax bills that were passed this past session. There was a particular one that lowered the overall tax rate, but got rid of the state deduction, I think, on federal taxes. So I think it was kind of meant to be revenue neutral. Right. Are there any other things you would want to do with the state tax system beyond what happened this year to go with your goal that you just mentioned of reducing the tax burden for Missourians?
Sure. So, you know, I look at the federal, if we have that as a picture, you know, in December 22nd, 2017, when the federal tax, the tax reform happened, already we see revenue is going up. There's more money in people's pockets. Now, in my district, so my Senate district is, federally, is Senate District number 2, and they've done studies. So for this year, more money in my pocket will be about $1,000. For a family of 4, it'll be about $3,100. For 10 years, and hopefully that will be, you know, when the House hopefully makes it permanent, because it's not permanent right now. Over 10 years, it's $50,000 in a middle-class family of 4 in their pocket. So I take that as a model and kind of the economy right now, where we've added so many jobs. The unemployment has gone down. African-American unemployment has gone down. I take that as a model. If we could keep chipping away while remaining revenue neutral, obviously, you know, we got to look at all of that. But again, for human flourishing and free enterprise and free market to happen, and more entrepreneurs to get out there and say, okay, I want to try this business, but we don't tax them to death, is always a win-win situation.
One of the things that I talked with Representative Matthews a lot about was flooding. I know that's mainly a local and federal issue, but Eureka and Pacific got flooded very badly twice. I covered that extensively. Is there anything that you think you could do as a state legislator to maybe talk with the local and federal stakeholders to try and lessen the flooding? Like, obviously, you're not going to eliminate it, and some of the things that have happened,
Call
like,
God, like,
you know, but I'd be interested to hear. I know it is not necessarily a state-centric issue, but I think it is something that the state legislator could be involved with.
It's very important, and Representative Matthews did do a great job. So he set the stage for us to. It was in the April election. We passed the, I think it was, I can't remember, Prop E. I think it was Prop E, half-cent tax for flood mitigation, because we didn't want to wait for the Army Corps of Engineers. No, you know, ill towards them, but it would just take a while. So for flood mitigation, to fix a bridge that we have out there that's kind of decrepit, and to redo the police station. So that did pass, and I did vote for that. Now I say you know, I like lower taxes, but that's the proper form of government. That's a good tax use. So I know in Eureka, where, you know, they're trying to put that all together, and obviously, you know, that have to wait for the revenue to come in, but they're starting on it, and they're getting together with many different engineers, and they're putting the plans together to move forward. Because yes, in the past 2 years, we've had 2 major floods because of all the other things that have gone on around our area. All the water has landed in our front seat. And so it's been devastating twice. First flood was really bad, and then we kind of learned our lesson. Second flood was bad, but we did some major sandbagging and all sorts of things. So, but yeah, it's a definite concern, especially Pacific too. It really got hit hard.
Absolutely. This is a question that has come up in the legislature the last couple of years. When there's been budgetary downturns, one of the things that has been cut is higher education, colleges and universities. And the reason why it's been cut is it's funded primarily with general revenue as opposed to a direct funding source, which can't be cut as much during lean budgetary times. I'd be interested to hear your take on how to maybe prevent that from happening, whether you think that was the right decision given that there was a lean budgetary times, just basically your philosophy on trying to fund colleges and universities like this one.
So my philosophy, I guess we'll kind of cover that. I've always been the type of person, and I believe in Americans, that we're very resourceful people. Way before we ever had a Department of Transportation, we built highways. In 1910 in Iowa, I think it was either Ohio or Iowa, I get them confused, farmers and business people got together and were like, hey, we need a highway, we need a good highway because we need, you know, our people to come in, commerce to come in. So they did, they built, it was kind of like a highway, kind of like we have Route 66. And so when I read that the other day, I'm like, holy cow, you know, and they give really great specifics about it. And I'm like, these are just a bunch of farmers and businessmen that got together and was like, hey, we need this, we just do it. And I know we were talking about, you know, where do some of the rural folks go to get medical care, you know, expanding Medicaid. But remember when we had clinics? And I always look at, like, Americans as we're such resourceful people, we don't need to depend on government for everything. I think we've been trained over the past 20, 30 years. It's always like, oh, well, what's the government going to do? Well, no, it's what can you and I do? How can we help each other? How can we band together? We have our political bands, and those are great, but as a smaller community, how can we do something ourselves? Now, you know, the college level and all of that, that's a little bit of a different story, but to answer a broader question of what is my philosophy, we're Americans. We're just good, industrious people, and we don't always need the government to help us. You know, the scariest words in the government or in the world are, "We're here from the government, and we're here to help." I think that's a funny joke, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's like my friends and I went back in the Tea Party days when the Ferguson happened. You know, we're all devastated. We're like, oh my gosh, this is awful. You know, we felt very helpless, as you probably did too, because you're sitting here looking at this war going on in North County, and one of my friends said, hey, you know what? Businesses are hurting there. Let's get together. Let's get all of our friends, and let's go have a boycott. And so 40, 50 of us traveled up to Ferguson like 6 or 7 days after it happened, and things were still smoldering. And we went to the affected businesses and we bought things, even if we didn't need them. We just, you know, bought whatever we could. It was we were there to help support those local businesses. And I can't tell you it wasn't the economic effect that it had, but the psychological effect. You know, here comes, you know, me, I'm tall, dorky white girl walking in like, hey, what can I buy? And they all kind of looked at me and, you know, said, I'm just here to help. I want to help you. And honestly, I still have a very good friend from that day that I met. And so I just think if we sometimes get our mindset out of what can government do? I need the government. No, actually, we just need our neighbor, and we kind of go back to when we started America, and we just helped each other. So
yeah, for my final question, let's parlay that into post-Ferguson policy, which is something we haven't talked about a lot here. I think that one of the things that became evidently clear after Ferguson is other states passed a lot of legislation trying to, you know, it's kind of in the basket of police accountability measures, body cameras, maybe having an independent prosecutor look whenever there's a police-involved shooting. Is there anything that you would want to do as a legislator to try to bridge the trust gap, which is clearly there between African Americans and police, especially when it comes to policies? Because some of this is a social thing, like, but some of it could be policy. So I'd be interested to hear your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, as far as policy, I mean, there's a lot of outside influences that that come into those types of situations. When I saw people were being bussed in from Chicago and different places to protest. And so it just put gasoline on it. But as far as policy, I mean, here's the way I look at it. You know, that day was very unfortunate, and when Michael Brown was shot and killed, that was kind of the you know, just the hair that broke the camel's back. So what we did see, and what we did help push, we did see kind of the beginning. We looked and we said, okay, why that? You know, many people have been shot and killed, unfortunately, in North County. Why was that specific scenario so awful, and everybody went crazy? But so for many years up in North County, you've had taxation by citation. You've heard that. You know, so if you drove through North County, no matter who you are, black, white, purple, it doesn't matter, and you were speeding, you got a ticket, and then if you didn't pay that ticket, these massive fines, and some people would end up in jail. And so obviously if you're a person that couldn't pay those, and you didn't pay it, and then you got pulled over again, many people got put in jail and these awful fines. So this happened year after year after year. And so what these small municipalities are doing, that was how they were making their revenue. It's crazy. So we looked at that, and we went to, I forget the House bill, or it was a Senate bill.
Senate Bill 5.
Thank you. Yeah, the municipal court reform bill. And so a couple of us from the Tea Party, we did the committee hearing, and it was nice. This will never happen again, but I thought it was great. The ACLU and the Tea Party sat side by side on that one issue, and we're all for it, and I thought it was a great day. And since then, it has been reformed, and so, things are backing off a little bit, and, all the taxation by citation has gone away a little bit. So there's little things, not that that was little, because that was a big thing. So things like that, where you look at it as a liberty issue of, you don't want to take money from people because they're speeding just to fund your city hall. So I'm sure there's more things out there that we could do, but that was a big one, and unfortunately, we didn't see that until then, but hopefully we can look, before things happen like that.
Thank you so much. All right, so we have one more contest before we adjourn here. It is the 119th district. Nate Tate, the current state representative, had a statement that he wanted me to read similar to Nicole Galloway, so I'm going to do that before I interview the Democratic candidate. I apologize for not being able to be here tonight, as I had 2 prior commitments before receiving the invite for this event. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve the citizens of the 119th district. It has been the most amazing experience of my life, and I am forever thankful to my constituents for the opportunity to have served them for these last 2 years. Should I be fortunate enough to be reelected, I would continue to serve my constituents with the honor and respect I have served them with over the past 2 years. I listen to my constituents, and I care what they think. In fact, a large majority of the bills I filed for this last session came from constituents. I would continue to fight for my constituents and address their concerns and causes as I have always done. I believe if you were to ask any one of my constituents who have needed my help with anything, they would tell you that I am prompt, transparent, and I make myself highly available, which is very unusual. There are many issues I could address in this statement, but a few I would address briefly is I would continue to fight the drug and opioid epidemic. I would continue to fight for the morals and values my district expects me to stand for. And just in case there's a question about sheltered workshops, I would continue to fight for them just as I have voted in favor of them over the past 2 years. In today's political environment, working across the aisle is not something that many people would expect could ever happen, but I have proven that it can be done. Many constituents, both Republican and Democrat, have commended me for putting politics aside and just serving my constituents and getting work done. I have proven I am not going to Jeff City to push any political agenda. I have gone to Jeff City to represent my district, even when that meant voting against my own party. I have always said that I am a voice for the people, and I strive every day to serve everyone regardless of party. Although it's not possible to please everyone all the time, I do my best. I thank you for reading this statement, and remember Nate Tate for state at the polls. So that is Representative Tate's statement. And so please welcome to the stage his Democratic opponent, Marcy Nichols. Okay, so similar to the other candidates, I'm going to give you a minute or two to introduce yourself, and then I will ask you 4 questions.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Marcy Nichols, and I'm running for state rep of House District 119. I was born and raised in Sullivan, Missouri, lived there all my life, so I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on the culture and the concerns and climate of Franklin County. I've been married for almost 3 years to Ted Nichols. I'm a proud mother, grandmother, great-grandmother. I worked at Fidelity Communications for 42 years. I left retirement in 2016, and my position was Vice President of Customer Care. Also, I am a first-time candidate, and I have people ask me, why in the world I wanted to run now. You know, I've retired and take it easy. Well, I have concerns, like all of you have concerns, and I'm a firm believer that we should all do our best to help with governmental issues, and I had some, so I'm going to name off a few I had. It's already been spoke about. Actually, all these have. I am progressive. I want health care for all. I think it should be a right for all Americans to have health care in this country. As far as education, want to see the public schools fully funded, and I want the teachers to get the wages that they so justly deserve. As far as the opioid issue that we have a bad issue in 119, and we have an issue, I'm sure, in other districts. I tell you what doesn't work: a 3-day detox and send them out on the street. Throw them in jail until they make bail, and then they've got to get a lawyer, which they can't afford. Finally, they get out of it, they're back on the street. We've got to find the root causes. We've got to work on that. We've got to have more mental health facilities, long-term facilities. And then, once these people get back on their feet, we need people to hire them. So when they are viable citizens, they can be hired again and be proud of themselves. And of course, I'm very pro-labor. I voted no on Prop A, and let's keep it that way.
You may applaud. I'm going to read a couple of questions from the audience as we wind down. And this is, I think, to piggyback on Representative Tate's statement. All state representatives, whoever gets in, how would you support all workshops such as MPAC in Washington? Is that a sheltered workshop? Yes. Okay. Okay, so. Okay, so
that's a wonderful, wonderful place that you work at, and yes, there is, right out off of AF by the airport. Yes. Yeah. No, I would fully support that. Bravo. Bravo to you. I wish more people were more involved. Yes, but definitely I would support impact. You're welcome.
Another question that we got was, do you believe it is...
That's okay.
I just want to make sure your question was heard. Do you believe it is fair that the pharma industry gets more lobbying power than the people who can't afford medication? I think that's probably more of a federal situation than a state one, but I guess
it probably is, but no, I don't think it's fair.
Yeah, but I want to just, maybe you could expound upon how to make prescription drugs more affordable for the working poor in Missouri, if that's...
Well, I think we have to have some serious conversations. I don't know if it would be at the local level either. But we've got to get some of the lobbying out of the pharmaceuticals. I didn't know until recently that we actually had I don't know if it was a law, but it was practice, where if you went into the pharmacy and you paid a deductible, or there was another drug that was comparable, that was cheaper, that pharmacist could not tell you that. And it's what was clawback, and this was actually something that was the pharmaceutical managers, set up with the pharmacist. And that is changing. That law is changing. I think in 2019, I don't think they have to tell you, but they don't have to keep it from you. So I think there's a lot of things we could do.
Is there a particular issue that is supported by the vast majority of the Democratic Party that you take issue with your party with? Because Representative Tate talked about voting against his party at a certain time. I want to give you an opportunity to maybe point to something the Democrats have done that you don't agree with.
That's a hard one. I've never thought about that a whole lot. I would hope to think that I am open-minded enough that I could always look at both sides. I know in the business world, I didn't always get my way when we would be in staff meetings and board meetings. You have to walk across the aisle and actually compromise with people. So, you know, I'm trying to think, as I'm talking, trying to think of something that my party has really done that drove me crazy, but nothing's coming to my head. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I mean, that's an honest answer. You know, we talked a little bit about pharmaceutical drugs, but I would like you to maybe talk more generally about healthcare and how you would expand healthcare for the working poor. Because as we've talked about in other races, I think that's a really big issue.
I believe that, you know, we have to start the conversation of actually healthcare for all. And I think it's going to have to be, you know, coming out of tax revenue, publicly funded and privately, you know, managed. I think that this will help the doctors go back to being able to practice medicine, and the administrative people go back to actually pushing the paper. If we have a big group of people like the United States of America, they do it in every other country that has a democracy. Why can't we do it? I don't see why not. I think that there's no reason in the world why, yeah, nobody likes more taxes. I understand that. But you're paying high bills now for your insurance. Either that or you've got a really high deductible. And I hate to tell you, these people that don't have insurance, when they're going into these emergency rooms, you're paying for it. It's getting written off. Now that, you know, we don't have the Medicaid in Missouri, they're getting nothing. And instead of dealing with that, the administrators, they're just writing it off. So it's coming from somewhere.
Since the first question was basically a pretty short answer, I'm going to give you one last question.
Okay.
And what's your view of Governor Parsons so far? What do you think that he's done well, and what do you think he could do better at?
I think that I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to him because as soon as he came in, I went out on the trail. I do think that he's concerned with economic development. I think that that's a good thing. I'm sure there's a lot of things that I would disagree with him on, but I hope that, like I say, I would be open-minded and try to work with whoever is in office. So I think he's doing okay.
Thank you so much, and thanks to all the candidates that were here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please give them all a round of applause. And before I adjourn everybody here, I just want to thank everybody who came to listen to these candidates. As I said on the outset, it is so important for people to be informed about their local and state candidates. And while the candidates were the stars here, you made it happen by coming here and being engaged. So stay engaged and vote on November 6th. Thank you very much, everybody.
If you have a smart speaker, you have access to the entire world of NPR and St. Louis Public Radio. All the latest news and all the captivating stories. Activate our voices with yours by telling your smart speaker to play St. Louis Public Radio.